Today we're joined by Collin Bronson of the city of Cordova. He's going to be doing an update on the Cordova Harbor Reconstruction project. Collin?
Hello, good evening. Thank you for coming. My name is Collin. I work for the city and project manager for the South Harbor Reconstruction. So just bear with me, I'm getting over a cold and it's all right here, so I have a cough drop, but I have little kids. It's constant colds. Anyways, who was here at the last one of these I did? Two. Well, of course you were here. Okay, I just wanted to see what possibly I wanted to go over from the last one. So I'll go over a little bit from the last one, just give you a little bit of background, and then talk about where we're at and where we're going to go with it. So feel free to ask questions as we go, please. No need to wait until the end. If you got a question, shouldn't derail me. And if you have specific questions or highly detailed questions, happy to get them answered either after this or later on through email or something like that, because I know some people have some very detailed questions that they want to know, how certain things work, especially with regards to electrical systems. So without further ado, let's get started. There's our quaint little town, and there's the South Harbor. And it's not like that anymore, but it'll look just like that soon enough. To the casual observer, not much. And to the Google Earth view, nothing will change, because there's only so much real estate we can use. So timeline, design, finance, permitting, scheduling. I'm not going to go over permitting unless you really want to go over permitting. It's a brutal process, but if you're curious, feel free to ask questions. And then the schedule, and then I'll go into some detailed things that I seem to remember, or questions that I know come up often. Folks will ask me, so I'll try to put those in where I could. So here's the timeline. The South Harbor as it exists began in 1979. It was called the Western Expansion, and it was finally built in like 1983, 84, of what you remember from last year. Floatplane dock was installed in the 80s. That was primarily for the herring fleet. As the herring went away, the use of the floatplane dock fell, and it became more of a net moving float or just an overall utility float. We are looking at the possibility of putting a seaplane float or two into the new harbor. I'm working on a grant for that, and it would be modular, and it'd be for two float planes at $500,000, and something that we could move throughout the harbor, tie up wherever. So what we're finding now is that with float planes, the herring are coming back, from what I understand. And so the state is hiring folks to do observation flights. Well, that's going on right now. You can't land in the lake, so they need some place to land and tie up. So there is a need for it. So we're looking into putting a float ramp for float planes in the new harbor, but that wasn't designed into the harbor now because just cost. Everything's a trade-off. So a lot of people ask about float planes. A lot of people ask about net bending floats. What we have is a drive-down dock, which is not a net bending float, nor is it a seaplane float, but it's an overall utility dock. You can drive a rather large, box truck down, called an H20, drive it down to your boat, unload, there's two cranes on it, and then drive away. So that gives a lot of capability that the old South Harbor didn't have. So that's a good thing. The plans for this have been going on for about 5 to 10 years. The old South Harbor had reached its design life, 35 years, and it was past its design life. If anybody walked around there or had their boat tied up there, that big turkey was just twisted, kinked, and you couldn't adjust it anymore. The floats were coming apart. Every big windstorm, a finger float would get blown off. So it was time. New harbor layout, very similar to the existing layout. The Harbor Commission was very closely involved with the design elements of it. I wasn't part of the design, but they made sure that they got what they wanted, because this isn't like a Miami yacht harbor or something like that. This is, as you know, very purpose-built fishing fleet harbor. So there were certain things that they wanted, and feedback from the community was, we want these types of things. And there's a certain, it's also Alaska, so it's got to be robust. It's got to be able to handle that wind and that cold and all that. So it's definitely a very well-built, purpose-built for rough environments. So, because that's what we need. And so this new harbor's got a 50-year service life. That's if you do the maintenance correct and everything. Some things won't last 50 years. I mean, electrical stuff comes and goes. But you know, the floats and the ramps and the gangways and the trestles, all that stuff's got a 50-year service life. The project began with a MARAD grant, MARAD, Maritime Administration under DOT. The city received a $20 million grant from them, and the city put in quite a bit of money. We'll go over that later. And then got a bunch of other grants, federal, state grants, to make the total, which right now the contract total is $39.9 million. This is what I'm happiest about, but I won't talk about it too much because I don't want to jinx myself. The project is currently on schedule and on budget. It's a big deal. Big deal to me. Floats I, J, and K have been installed along with the southwest access trestle and gangway. If you've been down there recently, you can see that. It's pretty nice. The seawall as well is probably, in totality, it's probably 60% done. And that's looking really good. And then we've got 2 barges that are stalled in Yakutat. They were stalled in Southeast for a while because of the weather. They were able to make it just up to Yakutat before the weather closed in, and they're hoping to get another window so they can get up here and offload the last bits of pile and parts and pieces. So still on schedule as of right now, subject to change. So this is the harbor. Again, it's virtually the same. I think the biggest difference for most folks is this is a drive down float. So this is a big parking idling area. It's got a concrete ramp that comes up here to a big cast in place, I don't know what you call that. Anyways, area to park and move vehicles around. It'll have certain services in there. Huge bridge access trestle that you can drive an H20, a big box truck. And then this is a big 80 by 80 float. It's got 2 cranes on it, and it's got a sewer pump out. So if you want to pump out your sewage system, your black water on your boat, you can do that. That's free. And it's got wash down. It's got a ton of stuff. And I think, I might be speaking out of school here with the harbor master, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be one of those things where if no one's using it, you can drive down and use it, or you can reserve it for a certain amount of time. I don't know what that time is, but if you need to bring somebody down to do some work on your boat or something, you could reserve it for a little bit. So that's a good thing. And again, it's really functional because you can bring a vehicle down. Just one-way traffic, one big truck at a time. This is all the seawall that's getting replaced. Actually, not even replaced, it's getting put in instead of just riprap. It's going to have a proper wall with big H-beams that go in vertically and then concrete precast panels in between. So it doesn't hold water back or anything like that. It's somewhat permeable around the edges, but it'll be a really nice structure because the parking now will go out onto that sort of cantilever out on there. And so we're able to get more parking and better parking. So it's still this sort of herringbone, 45 degrees, but now if you've got a 4-door long bed F350, your bumper's not in the street. So when you back up, you have a chance of looking out before you get into the street and seeing what's coming up, or I should say west along Nicolop right here. So the parking is safer. That was one of the requirements of the grant, is that you improve safety in the area. So that was a big safety improvement. We have ADA compliant docks, and we have ADA designated Americans with Disabilities Act compliant parking, and the gangways here are ADA compliant as well. So those really extreme tides, they're still usable by people in wheelchairs, something like that.
So are you dredging out between the seawall and, okay, so
No dredging.
are those L-float docks further out? What kind of water is underneath them?
So these right here have about, I think it is 0 tide, they have about 5 feet underneath them. So you shouldn't have a problem. If it's at a -3, do you need to swim up? Yeah, but these are also smaller slips too, so you want to have big boats there. So there should be plenty of water there. The nice thing about this, as opposed to the old design, is you can come and go through this at all tides. You know, you're not gonna be pinched by a super high tide. So that's why, now, if you're over on this side, G, H, and I, you can't just walk over to J and K. You gotta come up, walk across, and back down. But that's the only way we can solve the functionality to have this, what was the old LDOT, be functional at all times.
But it looks like the fingers are about the same as on the outside of, yeah.
32
yeah.
footers.
Is
Yeah,
it 32 as well?
yeah.
No.
And so right now, where we're at is we have all of this dug out, all along here, all the way up to the memorial. Sorry, memorial's right there. We just started digging this out. All the panels are in place along here. All the piles are in place in the panels, and they're starting to work on the cap so that the parking can go on there. But we do have the gangway and the access trestle in, and J and K are in, and most of the finger floats, not all, are in place, and I is about 80% in minus the finger floats.
So they're pulling all the armor rock riprap out?
Moving it out so they can put the panels in and they pull it back. Yes,
So the walk down ramp is, I can barely see it.
this one?
For the,
This
yeah, oh, that's it, to access. So
Right.
there'll be one ramp to access those.
These three. And one ramp for these two.
I see.
Will there be a pedestrian pathway along the breakwater
Yes. You mean the breakwater up here or the breakwater down here?
down there?
Yeah, you'll be able to walk along here.
Okay.
That was another thing, you know, we had to have pedestrian access. Couldn't be just vehicles right up until the edge, so you'll be able to move through them. In the original design, it was $10 million less than what we planned to put in. We had dredging going along here. We had another entire wall of floats right along here. We called that the O-Dock. And so originally we were gonna be able to do that for $30 million. But then reality hit, and this is $40 million. So we had to make some pretty deep cuts on it. And really the priority was parking, accessibility, and then the right mix of spaces. So I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the difference is in spaces, berth slips from the old one, but it's a better mix. And the harbor, that's, like I said, the Harbor Commission had a lot of input on that. Also the Harbor Master's Office, knowing what people want for slips and what sizes that are most used and most desirable. So that's what this reflects. This doesn't reflect growth or potential growth. It is just what we need right now. It's really hard to project that and to project it credibly when you're applying for grants. You can't say, well, I think we're going to grow by 10% over the next 10 years or whatever. It's kind of like, this is what we need right now, and this is what works. So,
Well, we're kind of full right now.
right, but it's a better mix. So we could, but we're also hemmed in by the rock wall. We can only do so much, can't build more. So the compromise was, let's just build a better mix of slips. Better mix of slips, all right, nice segue. Sewage pump out station, drive down flow. Removal of the creosote pilings replaced with steel. We got $3 million for environmental remediation, and that was a big one to get all that old creosote out. 3-phase electrical power, better parking on Nicola, more spaces and safer, ADA compliance, covered gangways, so that's really nice. They won't get packed with ice and snow. They're just like the ones on the north, the one on North Harbor.
I see those, once they have openings, was that just so they could set them, or will those be filled in? The gangways?
So there's a roof, and then there's sides, but it's open along the side.
And on the roof, you look at it right now, they've got 4 openings.
Yeah, that's how they pick it up with crane.
And that'll be covered in?
Yeah, it can't be, otherwise they'd probably just crush that metal if they were trying to, you know, basket it or something like that. So that's how they pick them up. Electrical comes up a lot. Excuse me. A lot of people ask me, like, what kind of service are we gonna have? Because the challenge with this is, I mean, 30 amp, 50 amp, 110, 208, so I can go in detail on that. The challenge with this is the North Harbor is not up to today's NEC, National Electrical Code. And the South Harbor certainly wasn't. So there are requirements in new electrical phasing, and new power supplies, and the ground fault interrupters that they're required to have may not be compatible with all boats. You don't know until you plug in. Seward's having that problem. Valdez, Kodiak, Homer as well. You know, these things stay in place for 30, 40 years. Get them to code, you make these huge jumps in code, and not everybody can keep up with it. So one of the challenges these other harbors have that we're learning from is that you're gonna have to plug in your boat and see what's going on. Hopefully it doesn't trip, but it might. One of the things they did that's really nice on the design is if one slip trips, it's not gonna take out the entire I float or J float or K float. It's just the way they sequence everything, it minimizes disruption. But there is a tool that we have that'll be complementary to test boats. You plug into it and you plug into the power pedestal. And then if your boat passes, good to go. If not, then there's something you need to do.
There's no 50 amp breakers?
There is 50 amp. Here's some electrical discussion here. So it's dense, but I'll let you guys read it. So that's that. And then lighting will not be pole lighting. Lighting will be the little pedestals, and it casts the light just where you want it. You don't have this light on these big, tall street light things in the harbor that's, you know, spilling light all over. So should be a better lighting.
Is that like the pagodas they got on the other side, the North Harbor?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought they learned their lesson.
Yeah, GFCI is a new NEC requirement. It's been a challenge. You will be able to test your boat. Currently, isolation transformers are the preferred method to minimize that. So you put an isolation transformer on your boat, and that's one of those things where it's electrical. So there's a whole bunch of different requirements, sizes, or systems that are compatible with your boat. It's unfortunately just one of those things when you get up to code, stuff has to change. So that is what I anticipate being a challenge for some folks, is to, how do you get your power? Potable water's provided, hose bibs, one per slip, just like it used to be, just, you know, garden hose. Sewage pump pit, pump out station will be free. You go to the harbor master, you request a key, and you use it, pump out, and be on your way. So it's kind of a nice option. Curious how much use it will get, but it's a nice option nonetheless. So dates we're tracking, April 2nd, that's when SERV starts. April 22nd, rather, we're gonna start looking at moving ships or boats into different berths. We're not exactly sure we'll be ready for them. We don't want to interrupt any of the works going on. I think most of the electrical and water will be installed on J and K and I, but G and H, not 100% sure yet, but that's when we're looking to start sliding a few boats in, and also pulling boats out of the shipyard. April 25th, arrival of the SERVs barges, the beginning of that training week. So there's a couple barges that they like to bring in. They call them mini barges. They're not that big. So we'd like to be able to tie them up. May 15th, beginning of the fishing season, mid to late June, completion of the project, all capabilities and all functionality. So, you know, in a perfect world, it'd be mid to late June, everything will be wired, all the lights are on, and everything works great. Possible opening ceremony mid-May or mid-June, just depending on availability and where we think about the project. So, any questions?
So on the wiring, it's just gonna be electricity. I mean, they don't need phone anymore or TV or.
No phone, no TV. And somebody asked me that the other day about phones, and it's one of those things where when we were de-scoping, pulling stuff back, it's like, well, what can you give? What There's no requirement to have phones. Very expensive to maintain, very expensive to run all that cable and conduit. So that was one of the things that came out.
What about internet?
I think that's covered through Wi-Fi.
So you'll put Wi-Fi?
Yeah, that there's capability. I guess they have it in North Harbor. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, it doesn't. It's scaled way back.
Yeah.
It's, if you're down there at midnight, it probably works great, but
Yeah.
during the day when we both got on there, terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a utility thing that's not, that's not like required. So it's, CTC will be the one providing that.
So someone's talking to them and planning.
I mean, if they want to do that, that's up to them to do that.
Well, I think they're customers,
Yeah.
I mean, if it's, we ask for it, I'm sure.
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely.
They're gonna need power,
Yeah, there's plenty of power.
so that's what I'm saying is before you get it. Don't get it all done and say, oh, we're gonna put it in, now we've gotta run power to and stuff.
How about fish cleaning stations?
Won't change. They'll be the same as they were, but there's no additional fish cleaning stations in front of here. Just a good question. You who's ever asked that?
How far is it from that, where the floating dock is, that ramp? You gotta go, and it sucked to be that guy out on that end there.
Yeah, it's on walk.
It's a hell of a long walk.
Yeah.
You have any idea how far that is?
But it's no, well, I guess they got rid of one ramp.
Well, yeah, I mean, the ramps are more where you can have your choice. You could go on the other one instead of here and have to go all the way over.
So they got rid of the,
If I could, so it's 1,000 feet. So you're assuming like if you came down here and you had to go to here.
Well, yeah,
So that's 1,000 feet right there. So that's probably 500, 1,500 feet.
quarter mile.
Yeah, 1,500 feet. Yeah.
I do repair works on the dock on boats. And it always seems like the one that breaks down is on the end.
Of course.
Rarely the one that breaks down on the main.
Of course. Yeah, so right now, as far as construction, and that's kind of the background and some details on it. But as far as the project has gone, it's gone very well. We haven't had much resistance on driving pile. It's just putting in there. They just go right in. I mean, virtually the weight of the vibratory hammer, because we don't have a pile driver on there. We don't need one. We have one, but we don't need it. Vibratory hammer, it just shakes it into place.
What would they call it?
It vibrates
Shakes
it in.
Yeah, it's 8,000 pounds. And so pile with the 8,000 pounds plus the block is pushing 12,000 pounds. And just that weight alone, they go in halfway.
Plus the piles are hollow.
Right.
So it's less resistance. So
They just go right in and they
how do
just
they
vibrate.
straighten them out after they get them in?
They go in pretty straight and then put a
Well, I
level
mean,
on.
if you look at them now for the last float they did, they're totally crooked. They obviously, somehow they straighten them.
I'd be willing to bet that those aren't final. So they'll take a bunch of piles off the barge and just stab them into the mud. So that as they're going, they just go pick them up. So they don't have to go to the barge, pick up a pile, put it in. They'll just
Well,
put a
these
whole
are-
bunch.
These are space.
In place.
Like I said, sometimes they'll just put them in wherever they can. They'll just stick them in there. And then when they're ready, they'll pick them up and put them in final.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd be willing to bet
But how
level
do they
on
keep
that.
it straight? That's what I.
Crane.
Crane?
The crane. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like a plumb bob, if you hang it, it's gonna go plumb and then they just drive it down into the mud. So, yeah, so that's been really good. As they work towards the east a little bit, I don't know. I mean, if they're gonna get resistance, it's gonna be on the eastern end. Shouldn't be that many rocks or should not really stiff layers of sediment, but so far so good. Weather's been pretty good to us. We've only had a few delays for weather, a few delays for maintenance. Things are going in place nicely. The roadside work, which I thought was going to be the real beast of it all, just with weather and whatnot, they've actually been able to dig that stuff, mostly because it's fill, dig that out pretty easy. And there's not too many interferences. I mean, everything's run along Nickoloff right there. All the data and all the electrical and the Trident's got a fish effluent line that runs through there. So there's a lot of stuff that we're trying to work between the high tide line and then all the utilities, but they've done a pretty good job getting us there. Yeah.
And where did the rock come from that they're using?
All right there. We dig it out, pile it up,
Oh, I
put it in
see.
the panels, and then put it back in.
Yeah.
And they pull all that riprap back up, and then whatever riprap's left over, and there will be a lot, they're just gonna pile it back up on the seaward side. So they're not wasting much when it comes to dirt. Any other questions?
So is that potential, I mean, you gotta look down the road too. I mean, this was a long time getting here,
Mm-hmm.
but you mentioned docks or something alongside the, wall.
Right here.
Yeah, I mean, that could be,
Originally, it was gonna be called an O-flow, and it was actually really cool. They were gonna put a bunch of small boat slips right there, but that required a ton of dredging. Could you do it in the future? I don't know, because one of the challenges is once that got axed because the dredging was too expensive, it changed the layout for here, and it changed the overall need for floats here, so everything here kind of got pushed to the north a little bit to give room for the O-float. So I don't know. I think if they were much smaller slips, they could do it. The problem is dredging. Dredging is not an easy undertaking. It's not easy on money. It's not easy on permitting. It's just hard, and it's not easy on disposal because it's polluted, it's toxic. You gotta do something with that stuff. And most of the time, you end up barging it and shipping it to the lower 48, and that ain't cheap. And typically they have a hard time permitting big dredge. So,
I mean, there's innovation and 10 years down the road is gonna be a different picture. I remember they weren't gonna do any wall because it didn't last, it wasn't any good, and now it's got a whole wall there. So-
different wall. The original wall, they couldn't do because they said the wave attenuation. So apparently there's enough, they do the modeling, smart people, the waves that come in would, come in at 1 foot and they bounce off the wall and come back 2 feet. So we had to go with a different wall, smaller wall and further up the high tide line. So.
With all them floats in the way at 1 foot, it's not gonna mitigate.
Yeah. We asked the same question, so, yes.
I haven't heard you say anything about it, so I'm assuming this is a no, but is the launch part of this project?
The ramp?
Yeah.
Boy, I wish it was. No. There is a plan for the North Harbor,
They're gonna replace it.
and the 3-stage, what they call it 3-stage in the ramp, that was gonna be in that. I don't know when that's, eventually it has to get done, but that's when they're gonna look at the ramp. But, yeah, I was hoping that thing would go and we'd get something, bigger, better, nicer, newer, and, either side sort of thing, but
Where was that gonna go?
same place, just the ramp, the ramp and the 3-stage. When they eventually redo the North Harbor, that's when they're gonna do this area down here, but it just didn't make the cut for this, for what we're doing right now.
Are there any plans to rebuild the harbor master or the restrooms?
No plan, not in the budget. I don't know, it's not part of my project, so I'm sure on some master plan, some capital improvement project, I'm sure it's there. Yeah, I'm sure it'd be nice to do that, and all those bathrooms could probably use a refresh, especially on the north side.
Yes.
It's a little sporting. So, yeah, and that's, it's all just part of this. Eventually you get done with this, and then the north side's gonna be ready to,
Oh, no.
go, so. Actually, the north side harbor's not the floats, it's the seawall, it's the parking, it's those facilities. They're not looking to redo the floats. I think they've still got another dozen or so years of life left in them. But as you know, the South Harbor was, it's wrapped and tweaked and losing finger floats every year, so it was time. Some of those, they pick up floats with the crane and they would just collapse because the foam had soaked up so much water and the timbers were so rotten, they were just buckling under their own weight. Excuse me.
Well, they're bolted in solid too. They didn't have, these are like the North Float now, North Harbor.
They have torsion rods in them, so you
Yeah,
can
they
adjust
can
them.
flex.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really nice. If you had a chance to look at them soon enough. Very nice, and they're like a foot taller too, another foot of freeboard, so it's really nice. I don't know what that does for the otters. I'm sure they can still get up there, but I think it'll be better for, pulling your boat up the side. It won't be as big of a drop.
And they're all modular, right? I mean, if you have a damaged one, you can probably pop it out.
Finger floats, yes. I would, I don't know what would, I'm trying to think the scenario where you get a damage like mid-string right here. But yes, you could, absolutely. But then you have plumbing in there and wiring and all that stuff. You'd have to splice all that. So that's, yeah.
They've never done that before.
Yeah, I don't know the scenario for, damage in the middle here. I think if you had damage that you needed to remove that.
Actually, what I was getting to is if they did dredge down there, we looked at it plenty on the other side, is you put another main coat in there and push I don't know the numbers of them. You could use more. If they're modular, like if they're on the North Float, you could add another piece in there without it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be a total remodel.
So as of right now, we're $20 million spent, $20 million to go. The city's ponied up about $13 million on this project. So it's a big investment, but for every dollar the city spent, they got $3, roughly 2 and change in return. So it's a pretty good return on investment for something that's going to last as long as this should last, properly maintained. So, because they always say, maintain it according to the operations and maintenance schedule, you should get a 50-year dock out of it.
Well, they did a huge thing when they put that extra breakwater in, mitigated a lot of the north wind, the swells coming in. That made a huge difference on, the old harbor. So, yeah, the potential's there to last a long time.
Yeah, there's no expanding. What we have is what we'll have probably forever. So, but it's a great project. It's been really fun to work on. I'm definitely ready for it to be done. But they're doing great work for us, and they're really the two companies, Turnagain and GMC. They've been really collaborative, and if they can save money or make a better product during the whole design process, they've been very very helpful on that. So yeah, it's been good. A lot of the permitting was a beast, but just the world we live in, and we have all the permits. And currently, our marine mammal take, they call it. We're not actually taking any marine mammals, but they call it take. Are very, very low, so we don't anticipate any problems with that. Knock on wood. And we're getting a bunch of bad stuff out of the water. That's good. All the creosote and rotten foam and everything. So that's a great thing. And hopefully it'll be a cleaner, better harbor. I know it will. So. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Very, very low. Is that like 1 or 2 otters, or is that like?
Like right now, it's like 2.
Okay.
But our cap is 30. Our cap for like stellar sea lions is 800 or something like that. And we'll never reach that because they're just not that close. Now, if we were starting to use a big jackhammer, big impact hammer, we might actually start touching into those numbers, because the way that they model this stuff is, say you're driving pile down here, there's concussive force that comes through the whole harbor, comes out here, and then goes out past Spike Island, if that makes any sense at all. And they model all that stuff. So it goes all the way to Hawkins. So if any marine mammal are in that cone coming off of Spike Island towards Hawkins, whatever it is, any marine mammal, they're gonna check it off the list. But our take for those is so high that, at this point of construction, I'd be shocked if we got anywhere near there. However, with the seals, or the otters rather, no, the seals, we're getting pretty, much lower, 30 is cap. So, but we're at 2, because they've been gone virtually during our entire construction process. Onesie twosies are floating around. but not much, so, yeah, we're doing pretty well, and ours are protected. They're not endangered, I guess I should say here, so that's not a big deal. But if we were to have a bunch of stellars come in and we were running the jackhammer, pile driver rather, but again, 800, we're halfway through. So permitting was a big deal. It will always be a big deal, probably even be more restrictive the next go round of construction. I know that when we started, they were talking about sunflower sea stars. You have to have people walking around at low tide every day and checking on, sunflower sea stars and moving them. We didn't have to do it on this project, and actually we don't see them, haven't seen them on this project, but that stuff will evolve and we'll come back around next time we do a big marine project here. Or anywhere in Alaska. Any other questions?
So it's all single phase, no three phase?
Three phase.
There will be three phase on there?
Yeah, I've got all the details on, I've got the basis of design here. I've got all the electrical design elements in here if you want to talk about it and learn about all the electrical and all that stuff. So I think it was on a pretty dense diagram there. That doesn't really tell you, but it is three-phase power. So 30 amp, 50 amp, 100 amp. So a lot better layout. And obviously 30 amp, 30 amp up here, 30 amp here, 30 amp here, and then it jumps to 50 on this side. As the slips get bigger, there's more power available. And then here it's 100 amp. I think this is 100 amp too. And so two new cranes there. So there's a lot of power available there. You can run a welder there and all that stuff. So about 440 or something like that. So plenty of power available. The water pressure will remain the same, but it'll be the same system, bled down in the winter, so there won't be water in the winter. It's amazing how expensive it'd be to run heat tape throughout this entire project to keep the water going all winter. Like not happening. Too expensive.
Then the environment too.
Yeah, be chasing around all the time.
Where would the cranes be placed at on that loading dock?
On the two outermost corners, so here.
Are they, how do you say, are they like folding cranes or like this?
Articulating?
Yeah, are they just?
That's a good question. I think they're pretty standard. I don't know if they don't telescope.
No, but.
They might, but they just swing, they're
Kind of
fixed.
still with a boom?
Yeah, fixed boom, they swing in and out. I can't imagine they're articulating movements. I can't imagine it would be. Yeah, all right. Any other questions? I know you got lots. You had so many questions last time. Yeah.
I'm fixing my side. Just ready for those people to go away,
Yeah. Well, so that's.
When can I get rid of all the interviews
Well,
on the other side?
Yeah, so
I think
soon.
you said April was, you'll start getting. rid
End of April, that's what our goal is. Like this whole project has been driven on a schedule, which has made it good because it's like you can't just extend it forever. We gotta get this thing done. But it's also made it a challenge because we had serves in the end of fishing season. And then so we had to push deeper into our construction schedule to make room for that. And then it's like, do you cut it early so that you can get boats back in? I mean, it's, pay me now or pay me later. But, like I said, the construction companies we're working with just done a great job of keeping on schedule because we did start later than we wanted to, much later, actually a couple months later, just to get stuff.
Do you see running electric and water on J and K before they have, finished through G or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're there now. All the water's, they haven't run water yet to it because they got flush and test and all that stuff. All the hose bibs are in. I was down there today. They were pulling wire. I would imagine, because there's only a couple guys. I mean, they can't put 100 electricians on this. But right here and here, I suspect, because they're just gonna, they started here, they're just gonna work their way down. So J and K will have water and power first. And so the hose bibs are in there, so, yeah. As soon as they're freed up, the water guys, the plumbers go in, they pull up the deck boards, attach all the fixtures and the the lines.
Yeah.
And then the electricians come in right behind and put the deck boards back on, and they just jump from float to float to float. Yeah, everything's nice. It's like a lot herkier, a lot beefier. You know, the potential for damage, still get hit, still get beat up, of course, but you'll be able to tell real quick, oh, this is a lot more thought and money went into it. Yeah, really nice stuff.
So when your schedule, you're talking all the floats and the pilings and stuff will be in. And then for the later phases, that's just finish with the water, the electricity, hooking that stuff.
So the punch list, so to speak.
When was kind of when was the dream date for, I mean, boats are gonna be crazy to get in there and it's gonna be hard to operate that big barge and stuff with.
Well, hopefully that big barge is gone. So they
what
won't
kind
need
of
the
time frame
barge
you look at that?
for the barge to go.
Yeah.
I think, so right now, we're working, J and K are done, working on I. Once I is done and the rest of those materials come in, they'll come around here, put all the pile in here, do G and do H. And the reason is they want to get this done and get the barge out of here as fast as possible because they know the ramp's going to get busy and the harbor's just going to get busy. So they don't want anything in here. We don't want anything in here as we get closer to the season starting.
So what's your dream date for that? What's your hope?
Early May. Early May. I think that's, you know, if things go as they've been going, you know. But again, you have to execute this in this time period. That's tough, you know, that puts a lot of must do, no failure options on the table, but I'd say maybe, or early May, rather. Early May, and then everything done, like signs, placards, all that stuff up mid to late June. You have a question?
I did. Any discussion on how hot the harbor was before? Is it going to be less hot now with this project, or will it remain the same?
That's hard to say because so much of that is based on the vessels in there.
Yeah.
So, you know, there won't be any electrical lines dripping and dipping into the water on the new build, but that doesn't, who knows what the boats do.
That's what the ground folks will tell you.
Right. Yeah.
Take out the bigger boats.
Whenever you have this many boats this close together, it's gonna be hot. You know, I don't know any tight, packed in, fully used harbors in the summer that aren't, you know? It seems like, yeah. Yeah, things go quick. They go real quick.
I have shore power and I'm just doing research. I do have I guess it's not the AC voltage that it's the DC and, shoot, I forget it. But it's a component that you put in there so the DC doesn't go in the water. So they do make things that you can put on your boat. It's just.
Yeah, active cathodic protection.
No,
Runs a current through the boat? but a different-
No, it's to the water. It's whenever you hook up your shore power, your AC, I can't explain it, but there's a stray DC current, and that's what gets you in the water. It isn't the AC. But you can put a nice layer, not a, shoot. I gotta look it up again. Years ago.
Yeah, some of them have an electrical, not, more than just zincs or anodes. They have an actual electrical system that plugs into your boat.
Right, that's one of the things they do.
Yeah.
But then there's a transformer that doesn't let that stray current out.
I'm not an electrical engineer.
And I'd have to read it again to.
I look at a lot of catalogs. Yeah, so that's the harbor project in a nutshell. Come a long way in a pretty short amount of time. There's probably 150 people working on this in one way, shape, or form in different states and all over. Barges and fabricators and bean counters in Washington DC and
So what about for fire? I mean,
same,
it's a long
Portable
walk to
systems.
in there.
all portable systems like before. There's no installed firefighting. Purpose-built firefighting. There's water and hoses, and there will be, firefighting extinguishers, but it's not installed. We don't have AFFF or something like that installed.
And is there thoughts or talk of putting in, best way I can think of it is man overboard to have this little, something like a candy cane?
The ladders,
Yeah.
they'll be all over.
Oh, you are gonna do.
Yeah, they're the ones that, so on all these floats, they'll have the ones that pull down so they don't interfere with the boats. But then on the drive down float, they'll have the candy canes you're talking about, they're always in the water, just because people are working on the side there often. So those will be a more stout, big ladder, big hoops on it. But then there'll be ones you can flip down in the rest of the floats. And I don't know the exact spacing of it. I can tell you, find out, but I don't know what the exact spacing is. I know they're expensive. Yeah, if it's like you go marine, you double it. If you go into the air, it's times 10. And if you go into space, it's times 1,000. That's the rule of thumb. Okay. Well, if you guys don't have any other questions, I appreciate you coming out. Like I said, you can always ask me, call me, send me an email. I have all the information to everything. If I don't, I can get it real quick. So I think you'll all be pleased with the harbor. It looks good.
Will we have access to this here, or is this just yours? Or, I mean, is it something that we could?
Isn't it
Do you want
posted
something
inside inside the city center?
I was kind of hoping that I could sit home and have a beer and look at
Electronic version?
it. Yeah. You see what's, you know.
I'm gonna go stare at it where I can actually see it.
Yeah, it does not, it's a PDF. It doesn't expand well. So, yeah, I'm, happy to send you a copy of it. It's not classified.
Yeah, actually, just for, how do you say, answer questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about the parking. That's, and the walkway, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, if you get the actual like normal size PDF, you can see like how many floats, how many fingers, stall length, total stalls. That's actually kind of interesting. So you know what this all means in terms of actual slip sizes, because it's hard to visualize or hard to imagine. But we got more slips. We got slips for bigger boats, so we can park bigger boats out here, outboard of H, outboard of I, and outboard of G, which we couldn't do before. So because it was always a wind loading issue, especially with the condition of the old harbor. So we can get bigger boats, more of them.
Are the main floats the same width as the North Harbor,
Pretty much. I don't know with the tape measure off the top of my head if they're 6 inches wider, 6 inches narrower, but it's all about the same. Yeah, I don't know North Harbor dimensions.
or they made the North Harbor itself? Those floats are narrower. It's harder to do a gillnet on there.
Yeah, the finger floats aren't wide.
No, not the finger floats. The main-
No, the main walks?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not much
And then
wider.
with the pagodas on there, it makes it even worse.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of people wanted a net mending float, and there's just nowhere to put one in this and still keep the function of this.
Yeah.
There's just really, you only have so much real estate. I think they're looking at that on the North Harbor if they eventually start building the North Harbor, but that involves a lot of dredging, so they can get a fuel dock in there and a few other things. So, but that's a whole other project for, another time. Question? No? All right, well, thanks for bearing with my voice here. I appreciate you guys coming out.
What?
Have a good evening.
Gary, my slip got longer and wider.
What?
Got a bigger slab? Yeah.